Today on the Locked On Hornets podcast, Nata Edwards, producer of the Eye on College Basketball podcast, joins me to talk about the NBA draft. We'll talk some prospects, we'll talk some coaching search, and we'll get his thoughts. Play a little Chance, Nata Chance. That's all today on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
You are Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
This is Locked On Hornets, and we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I admit it. Walker admits it. We have competitive sides. Nata, do you have a competitive side?
You already know the answer to this one. Yes. Yes, you already know.
Well, then you would be a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist classic on a classic Monopoly. So join your friends and download Monopoly Go now free on the App Store or on the Google Play Store. Thanks so much for making Locked On Hornets your first listen every day. We are free and daily wherever you get your podcasts, and that includes YouTube, where you can see my face. You can see Nata's face. You will not see Walker's face, Walker Mail of WFNZ, 12 to 3. He is busy preparing for the NFL draft, Nata, so he left us to our NBA draft devices.
So wait, hold on, because I know you have a lot. I know you have a mock. I know you have a mock.
Oh,
do
man.
you want to just?
Oh my God! You just reminded me. Oh my. Okay, no, I'm gonna have to let you talk. I did not get my mock draft because here's what happened. So I'm driving my baby to school, and I'm on the way back, and Walker texts me and says, "Listen, I've got to get some NFL draft stuff prepped. Can you do the show today with Nata?" And I was like, yeah, sure, of course. But in the scramble to get all of this together, I have forgotten my mock draft, but I will not let the people down. I will find one while we talk about draft. But first of all, Let me tell you can find my work on Every Hornets Boxscore.com. And again, you can find Nata's work on the Eye on College Basketball podcast. So let's talk about this draft coming up. The Hornets...
Yes.
We know they have the third best odds at the number one overall selection. The lottery will happen later on in May. We'll find out exactly where they're going to pick. But we do know some of the names that are floating around this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I mean, really, on down to 8, all of these names are sort of in play. And so I want to run down some of the college basketball names, since you are our college basketball expert. And I want to start with a name that we've talked about a lot and get your thoughts on him, Stefon Castle, the man out of UConn, the shooting guard that we're not sure can actually shoot. How scared are you about his shots, and how do you think he would fit if the Hornets made him the selection?
I remember a couple of years ago where we talked about LaMelo Ball and the jump shot was an issue. I would also say that LaMelo Ball kind of assuaged those concerns about the jump shot. I'm going to say the same exact thing when it comes to Stephon Castle. Stefan Castle game works basically because he's very coachable, obviously, because he played for Dan Hurley. You're talking about a kid that is super athletic, only got better as the season got on and as he got healthier, because he had the injuries to start the season. But as well as this kid is a grinder, man. He understands what it's going to take to get to the league. So if you're worried necessarily about the book night comps, I wouldn't say that. Castle's going to probably measure longer, and he's taller than Book Knight was. He plays with a basketball IQ that I cannot overemphasize. I am one of the biggest fans of Stephon Castle, and if he's there at 3, and I'm not so sure he will be, because after SAR, this draft gets very, 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 very murky. I think Stephon Castle should probably be number 1 on the board, considering he plays defense. He was the best defender. He shut off Terrence Shannon Jr.'s water during the tournament. Mm-hmm. He's a guy that I would absolutely take a look at if they stay at 3, if they drop to 4, and if they move up to 2. I'm not so certain that he shouldn't be the pick anyway. That's how much I believe in Stephon Castle at this point.
So do you think SAR is locked at 1, or do you think it would be a giant reach if they went Castle with the number 1 overall selection? Because Kevin O'Connor hasn't updated his big board in quite a long time. I think you have to go back to April 4th, but he does have Castle number 1 on his overall big board.
I think depending on the team, Like, if it's Detroit that gets number 1, okay, cool. I can see them going that way. Utah, if they get number 1, they're absolutely drafting him. And like, the only issue I have with the Hornets drafting Castle number 1 is that with the physical gifts that Alex Sarr has, you're talking about a guy that probably slides in perfectly. If Mark Williams doesn't play, if Mark Williams plays, he's perfect 4. If Mark Williams doesn't play, he's a nice small ball 5, and he can develop into, and he's got the gifts to develop into a very, at minimum, rotational center, which in this draft is something that you probably like. He's probably the second safest center on the draft board, not named Donovan Clingan.
And you have a small ball center who can shoot in Grant Williams. So adding a small ball center that we're not sure can shoot, but we are sure has some major physical gifts and some defensive ability, that just gives whoever this new coach is going to be. By the way, we're going to talk about that coming up here in the next segment. But whoever this new coach is going to be, Sarr would give you a little bit of flexibility there. So for Castle, you're less worried about the shot. You love the defensive potential. Before we talk about any other names, though, I want to take a quick step back. I'm not going to ask you the question that everybody asks around this time, which is, what do the Hornets need, out of this draft? Because I think, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but I feel like your answer would be the answer that everyone is going to give when it comes to the Charlotte Hornets, which is everything. They need everything. They need shooting. They need defense. They need size. They need physicality. All of these things that they need. So here's what I'm going to ask you as our resident draft expert. Of those everything things that the Hornets need, what do you think they can actually go out and get in this lottery? Or where do you think they could max out the ceiling on in this lottery? Is it defense? I don't think it's shooting, but is it shooting? Is it
it's
size?
Not shooting because it's not shooting because Connect's the only shooter I trust in this draft. Like Dalton Connect, and I'm not advocating anybody draft him in the top 5.
Okay.
Rob Dillingham is interesting, but if he measures out to 6'2", then you're better off keeping Trey Mann. But honestly, this is going to sound crazy, but I don't think the talent issues that the Charlotte Hornets have can be fixed in the draft this year. The draft is not that strong. The issues that they have can only be fixed in free agency. So if you're going to max out, I honestly think if you're not sure about Mark Williams, you can max out at center here. Sarr, maybe an Yves Missi down again if you want to trade back, possibly get a player.
What about Clingan? What do you think about Clingan?
Donovan Clingan is the safest player in this draft by far. So if you want to tell me that the Hornets are not certain about Mark Williams and they want to go get another center, that's probably the best thing that they can do right now. And that's where you can probably max out. If you're not sure about Najee, if you're not sure about Mark Williams and Nick Richards, you're probably going to be inclined to move. Go get a center in this draft because that's probably the safest bet, and you're going to max out. You're going to max out the impact in that regard at this point.
Really quickly, just as someone that observes the Hornets, watched them last season, I'm sure you want them to play better and be healthier next season. Do you want them to be safe in this draft? Like if they have the opportunity to go for Clingan or maybe, something a little bit more exciting, maybe a Ricochet from France, do you want them to be safe or do you want them to try to hit the home run here?
This draft is going to get at least 4 or 5 GMs fired. At least. At least.
Oh, Jeffy, he can't get fired. He just got hired.
Well, here's the thing. We'll get to the coaching search, which looks like a disaster.
Oh boy!
But at this point, yeah, I'm just saying, this is a draft that's going to get somebody fired. It's okay to make the Cody Zeller pick in this draft because there are a lot of landmines on here, and you don't want to come out of your first draft with your leg blown off. So I'm saying, if Clingan is the pick, I completely understand because at this point, I'm not sure the fan base can handle hey, we're still rebuilding in year 1.2 of this new ownership regime. So for me, I'm saying go safe. It's okay to be safe.
Yeah,
and go get the center.
Yeah, it's interesting too, right? Because Jeff Peterson takes over for Mitch Kupchak, and I think even the people that didn't like Mitch Kupchak the most would have to admit that
they miss him now.
Well, they did. They did some good things in the draft. They made some misses, some big misses in that 21 draft, but they also had some big hits. And so, yeah, you wonder if Jeff Peterson is going to play it safe here in this draft where there are a lot of like wild cards. There are a lot of question marks. Last name, really quickly, that I want to ask you about is Cody Williams. I read somewhere that he's the most polarizing pick in this sort of top 7, 8 names because some people think he's going to be just automatic star, two-way player, great, and then other people are like, no, I don't see it. Where are you with Cody Williams, and do you have a comp for him?
Jaden McDaniels is probably my comp. The only thing is, as we remember, Jaden McDaniels was drafted in the 20s.
Right.
Unfortunately, Cody Williams is probably going to be drafted in this top 10 because, again, this draft is full of landmines.
Right, 10 is the new 20 in this draft. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Like this is a landmine-filled draft, and this is going to get a lot of GMs fired. So I do think that if the Hornets slide back, probably to 5 or 6, which is possibly likely to happen. Unfortunately, I have a sinking feeling the Hornets end up with number 1 in this draft, and even then, all the pressure on not drafting Anthony Bennett is going to be in this draft. I would say this: Cody Williams makes a lot of sense for a team that struggles to have wing defenders. That if you're not sure about the health of Cody Martin, also makes a lot of sense.
Cody for a Cody.
Castle makes Cody for a Cody. Castle fits in that regard as well. Like there's a lot of these guys that, like, if you're telling me betting on the upside, he's one of the 2 or 3 that I would actually bet on the upside on, because the rest of them, this is not one of those where I'm gambling on upside, because there's a lot more that you can crap out on.
I love that you've come on this podcast and hit the triple Cody. Like you mentioned Cody Zeller, then you throw in a Cody Martin. We've got a Cody Williams. The Hornets love Codys. So we'll see what happens. On the other side of this break, I'm going to reveal I did find a mock draft while Nata was giving you all of those delicious draft takes. So I'm going to give you my mock draft, and we have one more name that you kind of mentioned, but we didn't go too far into. So that's my tease on who this mock draft has the Hornets taking. Plus, I've got to get your thoughts on J.J. Redick, on Charles Lee, on what the Hornets are going to do with this coaching search. So that's coming up on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Don't go to sleep on the Hornets just yet.
That's all ahead. Plus, we're going to play Chance, Nata Chance. Does LaMelo Ball get back to 100% health? Does LaMelo Ball get back to 100% LaMelo? All of that ahead on the Locked On Hornets podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, this sounds like draft analysis. Do you want speed? Do you want power? Do you want shooting? Do you want physicality? eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you will always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or you get your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. More Locked On Hornets ahead. Back here on the Locked On Hornets podcast, thanks for making us your first listen every day and your first opportunity to hear a mock draft. That's right, folks. I'm keeping my promise. I almost forgot, but I didn't forget. It is the daily mock draft, and this one hit, I kid you not, 1 hour ago. It is the freshest. It's right out of the oven. Steam is coming off the top of this mock draft from USA Today and Jeff Zilgett, who has the Charlotte Hornets taking Rob Dillingham, the point guard out of Kentucky. And Zilgit writes, as a smaller guard, he is elite at creating his own shot through spot-up shooting or dribble penetration because of his speed and ball handling. Will need to get stronger and improve his shot selection. Even though Kentucky lost in the first round, Dillingham is a hot prospect. And by the way, that selection came at the number 3 slot. So, Nata, you mentioned him briefly in the first segment. Give me your thoughts on Dillingham and the Hornets in particular taking Dillingham when they not only have LaMelo Ball, but they have Nick Smith Jr. as well, and Trey Mann. So give me your thoughts on Dillingham, the fit and the player.
I hate the fit. I really do hate the fit because, quite honestly, like if you're gonna draft, if you're telling me you're drafting Dillingham, then who's leaving? Because that means at least 2 of Trey Mann, Nick Smith Jr., Cody Martin, are probably out of here. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't make sense for that. On top of that, we haven't done the measurements yet. What if he's 6'1" or 6'2"? Because that's a legitimate possibility. If he's 6'2" with a 6'7" wingspan, I'm not sure I'm drafting that guy in a league that, if you haven't noticed, is getting longer and skilled.
It's true.
Like, unfortunately, like the way this roster is going, the way that at least Mitch intended to build this, and I don't think he was entirely wrong on doing this, by the way. They were going for longer, more skilled guys, which is why they went with the Cody Martin. They tried the Cody Martin at point guard experiment. Didn't always work, but I understood the thought process behind it. Their idea is we need to get longer, more skilled. Rob Dillingham doesn't fit that. He's a tremendous shot maker. But if you're telling me that you're drafting this guy at number 3, you're telling me there's a lot of roster change going on, and at that point, now you're going to basically be putting Nick Smith Jr. out on the corner saying free to a good home, because basically that's what's going to end up happening.
Okay. Great thoughts on the draft. Let's shift our focus to the coaching search. Now, before we started this show, you told me I am not confident at all in this coaching search. Then
I'm not.
Okay, hold on. You're ready. The flames are tickling your lips. You are ready. But when we hit record, you upgraded that in the first segment from I'm not confident at all to this is a disaster. So Nata, tell me, why is this coaching search so far that has featured a serious run at JJ Redick according to Shams? That's sort of the latest news. We've heard a lot of other names. Why is it a disaster so far in your mind?
Because when you have Kevin Young, who you interviewed, and rather than wait around to take a second interview with you, he went and is going to coach in Salt Lake, not the Jazz, but BYU, and has to shave that immaculate beard of his to coach there.
Can ever have a Coca-Cola again?
No, there's a whole lot of this that doesn't look good. Lindsey Harding, we have not heard anything about a second interview. We have not heard anything about a second interview with Charles Lee. If Charles Lee is the guy, cool, I understand. But the way this looks, when you start going to Jordan Ott, when you start saying, hey, Jerry Stackhouse, you're not doing anything, how would you like a coaching interview?
Stack.
Like, when we're going that far, and granted, I think Stack's a better pro coach than a college coach, but even then, like, we're going to places that no one else is really going. And I understand, and I heard your reasoning for this a couple of days ago when I was listening. And again, some of this does feel like new age owner and wanting to do something different for the sake of doing something different. Mm-hmm. But at this point, this feels like no one took the temperature of the reputation around the league, and instead of getting the guy that you knew would say yes. Now, mind you, I say that, and we remember everything with Cliff and that one little part in the Woj report of Schnall and Plotkin were willing to bring him back.
Right.
Maybe we're understanding a reason why now. Because quite literally, this doesn't look like anybody really wants the job. And to compound this, if these hot assistants don't want the job for like the head coach, what makes you think they're coming if like JJ Redick shows up?
Well, it's interesting, right? Because this Clifford leaving gave them a head start. But on his way out the door, not really out the door, just to down the hall into another office, on the way out, he's telling you of all of these frustrating things that don't have to do with the owners, but have to do with the set of players and maybe some of the attitudes and some of the things that are going on behind. He wasn't like too explicit, but you could tell like something was dragging him out of the coaching. And so obviously, if you're a candidate, look, a job interview, and a lot of people don't understand this, like a job interview is the company trying to hire the best person, but in a really good scenario, it should also be the other way around. Whereas as a candidate, you want to come in and find out, am I a good fit for you? I know you're trying to hire me. I know this is an exclusive job, only 30 of them. But also, if you're a first-time coach, you don't want to do a Borrego, right? Borrego comes in, gets fired, and look how much he's had to do now to get back to that place where he could be interviewed again. If you mess your first job up, it's going to set you way back on your goal of being a long-time head coach in this league, so you want to make sure you get it right. And so, yeah, I think I hope it's not the case that they're having trouble hiring the big name. But look, Jordy Fernandez decided to go to Brooklyn. You're right. Kevin Young went to BYU. What's Charles Lee going to do? Is he waiting? Because we all thought, oh, head start, that's good. But it seems like Charles Lee might be waiting on some other opportunities to open up so that, you know, he could go and find out if the grass is greener somewhere else. So I wouldn't call this search a disaster. I would just call it.
It's close.
Well, it is what it is. I mean, this is, you know, this is not. You're not talking about taking over a roster that is ready to compete in the playoffs right now. There are steps that have to be made, and so you're going to have to find a name that is willing to make those steps. JJ Redick could be that name. Now, are you concerned about? We said this in the last episode. The Redick news broke people into a couple of camps. One camp was, this guy has to have head coach, some coaching experience before we can hire him. We can't make a celebrity the president of the United States again. We have to, you know, somebody has to have some experience before they get into the job. Or they're like, I love this. His basketball acumen is amazing. Or they're in this third camp, which is, why don't we interview Mark Jackson? What camp are you in?
Okay. I will address each camp equally. So let's start with he needs more coaching experience. I absolutely agree with that.
Okay.
Because when you start thinking about it, let's go back through the names. You have Jason Kidd, basically went from playing to coaching. Okay. Do we remember how bad that Brooklyn stint was?
Right. It took him a while.
Pretty bad.
It took him a while.
And then on top of that, he almost botched Giannis. So let's remember that too. So you have those two things.
Yeah, Larry Bird in Indiana, that went pretty well. It's like one of the.
Larry Bird got a hit.
Yeah.
It's one of the rare cases. One of the rare cases, and if I remember right, Larry Bird at least took a little bit of time and stepped away from the game, and then decided to do that.
Yeah.
Steve Kerr obviously was the GM first at Phoenix, but then we get to the Mark Jackson, which if you're telling me hiring Mark Jackson is a viable option, that just tells me you don't know how to read or Google. Like, I'm going to be real with you. You don't. Because if you remember this, Mark Jackson openly bucked at the Lakers when they tried to give him help. He turned Festus Ezeli against the rest of the locker room, made him the scapegoat. And then there's the entire thing about Memphis and the Lady of the Night. If you do your Googles, you'll know what I'm saying.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, while he was the coach.
Oh, boy.
So, Mark Jackson is not a viable – no. If you're thinking, why not hire Mark Jackson, please Google it. And then you know what? I'm actually again, my Twitter handle is Nata the Scribe. You are welcome to discuss this with me after you do the reading.
Jump in the mentions.
I'm inviting anyone
you are
really realistic.
You're the college.
How often do I do that?
You're the college professor. You're like, do the reading. You have to do the reading before class, or you're gonna get schooled. Okay.
Like that's the thing. And then on top of that, I just don't think JJ Redick is a good idea in just a holistic sense. If you're having to hire JJ Redick, that means you have skipped a bunch of steps to get here. And if that means, we need to go fix the facilities, go fix the facilities. If that means you got to hire some more training staff, please go hire some more training staff. This looks like hiring JJ Redick, no matter how successful or unsuccessful it is, on its face sounds like you are an unserious NBA franchise. And unfortunately, the Charlotte Hornets have had that reputation for entirely too long.
But I think look, to get serious, you have to reckon with the fact that you've been unserious. And so I think that, look, you talk about skipping steps. I think they have steps to make. And I don't, honestly, at this point, I don't even think it's a terrible idea. If you're going to take a risk at the head coaching position, do it now. Like you've got a few years before Brandon Miller goes all NBA. We don't know what the status of LaMelo Ball will be moving forward with the ankles. Big question marks around that, and Mark Williams. Like, there are a lot of question marks. And so, look, if you hire Redick and it goes wrong after a year, after 2 years, I don't know that like that would set them back all that much, because they've got steps to make anyway. If this were a team, now see, to me, if this were an Adrian Griffin in Milwaukee situation, that I would avoid, because then you've got a solid route back to a championship, but that's not where the Hornets are at all. But interesting conversation. If you got more thoughts, let's take it over into the next segment. And I want to play absolutely. Chance, Not a Chance. That's coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Don't go to sleep on the Hornets just yet.
I want to ask you about Brandon Miller too. How, what's the chance that he gets an all-star bid in the next 2 years? Chance, not a chance. We'll talk about Trey Mann, Micic, some of these trade pieces. Are they going to be with the team next season? That's coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast. This next segment is brought to you by our sponsor, BetterHelp. Sometimes we all need the opportunity to get something off of our chest, like our friend Nata needed to get that coaching search disaster take off of his chest. I hope he feels better. Big or small, certain things can really start to get to you. It's important to let that out, especially to someone who's unbiased on your life. So today, I want to say how I really feel about something, and you might even be thinking about the same thing this week. And really, it is this coaching search. It's JJ Redick. I'm conflicted. Honestly, I'm conflicted, because I hear what Nata says about the experience mattering, and I feel that somewhere in my bones. I feel that, but at the same time, I've been begging this team to get creative. I've been begging this team to take a swing, and sometimes the big swing pays off. So we'll see what happens. But therapy can be different for everyone. Most of us have bigger problems than JJ Redick being the next head coach of the Charlotte Hornets, and it's important to get things off of your chest every once in a while. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. This episode is also brought to you by our friends at DoorDash. Want to make mom smile? Well, you gotta make your mom smile. Start Mother's Day with flowers or surprise her with gifts from the brands she loves, delivered the very same day with DoorDash. Does mom have a sweet tooth? Is she a tech enthusiast? Nata was telling me that he was taking a family member to trade in an iPhone 6. So I don't think that's not very much a tech enthusiast, is it?
No, not at all. No.
Well, you could maybe you turn mom into a tech enthusiast with DoorDash. Maybe she's a beauty connoisseur, or is she outdoorsy? No matter what she's into, you can make her smile with a fruit or a flower bouquet, makeup, tech gear, workout wear, and more. Get all your Mother's Day gifts all in one place, and get 50% off your next order, up to $15 when you spend $15 or more on your next flower, convenience, grocery, or retail order now with Locked On NBA. That's Locked On NBA, all one word, smush it together. Order using DoorDash today. Terms apply. More Locked On Hornets with this guy, Nata Edwards, coming up. Final segment here. I want to play Chance, Not a Chance with you. We're going to go rapid fire here in 1 second. Yeah. But we haven't talked to you since the season is over. This is your opportunity to get your feelings out about what happened, about the injuries, about Clifford stepping down, about LaMelo injuring his ankle for the 7 billionth time. Like, when the season ended, here's the question. When the season ended, what was your first thought?
Thank God. Thank God. Like, it's one thing to, like, cover the team. It's another to have to pay attention to March Madness and watch the college basketball season. And then you go and you look at this Hornets team, and it was just it was like that Silky Johnson joke about Buck Nasty's coat. It was just bombed out and depleted. Like that's what this Charlotte Hornets roster was. And people out here rooting for this team to lose in a bad draft. And I'm asking myself, where's the self-awareness? And it's just, at this point, I'm glad it's over. I'm sad Cliff had to basically say, yo, I'm out. But it sounds like there was, like you said earlier, there are a lot of forces pushing him out. And I just hope that a lot of folks grow up. Between we're not sure LaMelo is actually hurt, or if he's actually withholding his services because he wants Clifford out. I just want grown-ups on this roster.
Wow, you're throwing bombs out there. I've not heard that. I've not speculated on that. I've not seen that speculated on. Nata, you're throwing bombs out about LaMelo Ball withholding services to get Clifford out. What are you doing on the show right now?
Well, you know what? I'm causing chaos. I'm the chaos engine. You know this.
Okay.
There's a part of me that just is very happy to see this. Like, one, I'm happy to see the Jordan regime over, because for a long time, Michael Jordan was the accurate blame of this franchise. Yeah. Now, whatever goes on from here, you can't blame him for any of this. There's also, again, Cliff is gone. You can't, again, the new coach is going to have to be your whipping boy now. And then on top of that, I just hope LaMelo grows up. I hope LaMelo has a honest and grown-up conversation about those ankle braces. Mm-hmm. And, last thing, I know this is going to upset a bunch of people that are going to call me an idiot on Twitter or in the comments. Good. But I don't think Miles Bridges can come back. I don't think there's a spot for him for going forward for this team, no matter how much he scored on a team that won 21 games this year. So, but hold on. Do you think that's when you say that? Do you say that from a moral perspective, or do you say that from a money perspective? Because I think morally, the ownership, the new ownership, has been pretty clear that they're in Miles's corner, and Miles feels like the team has been in his corner when no one else was. But to me, I don't think it's a moral thing. I think they've completely reconciled that to themselves, not to everyone else, but to themselves. But the money thing, I think Detroit or someone's going to throw a lot of money, and then you have to make a decision if you're the team. I don't think, there's a part of me that thinks that there's no fit. If you're talking about building a playoff roster, I don't think there's a fit for Miles Bridges at the 4. And that we've gone over this. The defensive lapses are bad. We've gone through, the defensive lapses are bad. The jump shot shows up some days, other days it doesn't show up. And more importantly, with this new CBA, is it worth going into the tax for this guy? I'm not even talking about a moral. I'm taking the morality out of it, largely like they have. But from a basketball perspective, when you think about what he does a lot of things right. He scores. He does, and he brings the intensity.
He's available. He's not injured. He's not injured.
Exactly. But when you're talking about signing a guy to probably 25, 28, maybe even $30 million a year with declining athleticism, because that was a thing too. Does he actually fit, or do you need to go find somewhere else to be your starting 4?
And the one wild card here is Jeff Peterson, right? Because the team has been in his corner. Plotkin was a part of that decision making as well, but Jeff Peterson wasn't. So if Jeff Peterson comes and evaluates the roster, like you're saying, and says, "Well, I don't know if this this guy would be a fit at 18 million. I don't know if this guy's a fit at 30 million, and so it's true. There are some factors here. We'll see. All right, very quickly, rapid fire. Chance,
let's do it.
Not a chance. I give you something. You tell me, is there a chance that this happens, or is it not a chance? First up, let's go back to LaMelo Ball. Chance, not a chance. LaMelo Ball gets back to 100% health.
100% health, not a chance. I like him, but if he plays 65 to 68 games a year, I'm okay with it.
Okay, resetting the expectations. How about LaMelo Ball gets back to 100% LaMelo? Chance, not a chance.
Chance, absolutely. Now, the only question is it this year, or is it this next coming next upcoming season or 2 years from now.
Okay. Brandon Miller gets an all-star bid, not next season, but in the next 2 years. Chance, not a chance.
Chance, because I think he's going to have a lot of shot opportunities, and I think with a growth of a lot of these young guys, I think he's going to be excellent next year.
Let's stay with Brandon Miller. Brandon Miller gets an all-NBA selection in the next, let's go 4 years. In the next 4 years, all-NBA for Brandon. Okay, boom, chance. Because it'll be for money, so he'll absolutely get there. He's absolutely going to get there. And what, just really quickly, what have you seen from Brandon Miller that has impressed you the most this past season?
Honestly, the basketball IQ.
Yeah.
He immediately came in and was probably the second smartest player that on the roster, and only got better. And I think once he understands that this team is most likely going to be his, because we don't know the availability of one LaMelo Ball, I think that's going to change a lot. I think we're headed to multiple 30-point games, maybe even a 40 ball. But I think where we're headed, and he knows the path to go. I think he's only going to get better. And I do believe that he's going to be the revelation, and he's going to be the second draft pick that Michael Jordan and crew actually got right.
Particularly offensively, Brandon Miller does so many things that we take for granted just because we over the past couple of seasons, we've seen a lot, particularly from young players, where it stands out, where you go, why did you make that pass? Or why didn't you make that pass? Or why didn't you take that shot? Or why did you take that shot? Those kinds of reactions. I mean, I could probably count on one hand the amount of times that I felt that way about Brandon Miller this past season. That's when we talk about IQ, we're talking about things that oftentimes we don't even notice, because you notice when things look goofy, and when he's out on the floor, particularly when he has the ball in his hands, things don't tend to look goofy. So I totally think you're right there.
Now, the other thing is defensively, he made some mistakes, but a lot of those deficiencies are strength-related deficiencies. That will get cleaned up with a proper training staff and a proper offseason with weight training programming. He's going to be really, really good on the defensive end. So we're talking about a legitimate two-way guy that might end up being a top 40 player within, at minimum, a year and a half. And we're talking about a guy that might be top 20 sooner than we think. I'm not saying we have to pit LaMelo Ball versus Brandon Miller, because I think that's a really dumb argument. Mm-hmm. But at the same point, if this ends up being Brandon Miller's team, I think we're going to see a little bit more attention to detail from a lot of guys on this roster.
I think it already is his team. I think he was savvy in understanding that without LaMelo Ball on the floor, there was a vacuum, and he turned the vacuum to high and took up all the oxygen and set himself up as leader. I mean, to me, that was super savvy for a rookie to come in and do that.
So Captain Phillips did. You're telling me you're telling me he's Captain Phillips.
He raided the boat.
Look at me.
He raided the boat. Well, he told that to the media. Yeah, he's like, look at me. Yeah, I'm the captain now. Forget about that guy that's not playing. It's me now. One more. I was going to ask you about Trey Mann and Micic, but one just hit my head, and we'll end here.
Yeah.
Malik Monk. He just barely missed out on the Sixth Man of the Year award by just a couple of votes. But an amazing season for Sacramento. But if you heard him in his final press conference, it didn't sound like Malik Monk's going to be back in Sacramento. So I give you this as the final chance, not a chance. No. Malik Monk ends up back with the Charlotte Hornets. Chance, not a chance.
Why are we add another, if they're going to do that, just draft Dillingham. Just draft Dillingham. Not a chance. Because I think that's a mutual thing. I think Malik burned bridges here, and I think a lot of folks that may or may not be here burn bridges with him. There's no chance he comes back here.
Wow, not a chance. Nata says, don't get funky for Monk, get silly for Dilly if you're going to do that. So I like it.
If you're going to do that, you might as well. Especially with this new CBA, you just go get Dillingham. Just go get Dillingham and let's make it work.
You heard it here, folks. You can put it on the ticker on Ion College Basketball. Nata Edwards advocates for the Charlotte Hornets to select Rob Dillingham from the University of Kentucky. Got you on the record.
Either, I don't know, someone's going to say college basketball analyst recommends Malik, again, Rob Dillingham at 3, and I'm just going to be upset. despite the fact I've gushed over Castle for like 15 minutes.
Okay. Well, that's how it works. When you come into the arena, so sometimes you can't control the outcome, but I appreciate it. This has been fun. We've gone way over because we've had so much fun. Thanks so much to Nata Edwards. You can check out his work on Eye on College Basketball, and he's already told you jump into his mentions on Twitter and roast him for all the takes here. But you better do your reading. You better get educated, because if not, Nata will educate you. He will catch you up. He will link you to the reading. Okay. Thanks so much for making us your first listen. Now, check out Locked On Sports Today live on YouTube. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Subscribe to Locked On NFL Draft. Listen to WFNZ 12 to 3 to hear Walker's take on the NFL Draft. Will the Panthers trade into the first round and get their first round pick back? We'll have to see. Thanks so much for making us your first listen. What? You got a take? You got a Panthers take?
Let me put it this way. I cannot wait to see the reaction if the Panthers trade into the first round. I just want to see the reaction. That's all.
I want to see. Locked On Panthers. Check that podcast out too. All right, I'm done. Thanks so much. Go Hornets. Go America. Let's swarm Charlotte.